Hello and welcome to episode 82 of my podcast all about knitting and crochet and my yarn shop here in Wiesbaden, Germany. I'm Kiko and today is February 1st, 2021. Today I'm wearing all the alpaca yarn and the scarf that I'm wearing is called the Sea Flower Scarf by Yumiko Alexander. I think she's a Japanese designer who lives in the USA, and this is the book that I got the pattern from, Rustic Modern Crochet, and this is what the original looks like. So I really like the pattern, but I'm not a fan of the brown color, so I chose a different color. And the yarn I used for this scarf is the bulky weight alpaca yarn by Hansa Farm. And before I take it off to show you, I just want to draw your attention to the buttons that I added in. They're not part of the pattern, but because it's quite heavy and not too long, I thought it'd be quite fun to have some buttons in there. So it's just two buttons, one on this end and one on this end, but that makes it possible for me to just button it and make sure the scarf stays where it's supposed to be. And now I'll show you, oops. That's my hood. I'll show you the scarf. So it's a fairly easy pattern. You crochet in rows, and while you crochet the rows, you add those flowery bits. And especially as it's called sea flower, I thought the blue color was really fitting. And I'm not quite sure at the moment whether these rows were part of the pattern. I may have added them in just to make the scarf this little bit wider. And the bulky yarn by Hansa Farm is really, really, very soft, but it's very heavy. So I used 11 50-gram balls to crochet this scarf. But that also means it's that much warmer, and I just love to wear this. But before I put it back on, I'll show you my hoodie, my cardigan. And that's almost completely crocheted out of squares, granny squares. So the back is one square. And then the hood, that's two squares. It's one square on this side, one square on the other side. And it makes this really oversized, beautiful hood that I just love because I need to keep my head warm. And I often bunch this hood up against my neck if I'm running around without a scarf and I just get a bit cold back there. I'll just use it like this. And the sleeves is another square that's folded in half. And then the fronts are made out of two squares. So those two squares together are half as big as the back part. And then to make sure you can close the cardigan, there's a bit crocheted on in the front. So that's the only bit that's not a square. It's those two bits that are crocheted onto the front. And that's it. And it's so easy to do, and you can do it with every yarn. You just have to measure how wide you want your back to be, and then the rest you can just improvise. But I did not come up with the idea by myself. I got the pattern from this beautiful book, Moderne Granny Squares. It means modern granny squares. The author is Virpi Mariana Zira. I think she's from Iceland. I forgot. But one of the funny things or great things about this book is that you actually open it like this. And it's printed like this. And I think that's really, really funny. And it's a beautiful book. It has lots and lots of interesting patterns. And she has an interesting way of writing down her patterns. I'll just show you the beginning of this. It's really easy, but most of them are like drawn with chalk on some background, so that's quite funny. And all the projects in the book are made of granny squares, but kind of with a modern twist and a bit different from what we're used to. And this is the cardigan that I made. I made it almost exactly the way it's written. I did change the size of the squares a little bit to make it the way I like. It. She has a lot of color in there as well. It's not just gray, so I love these colorful squares, and one day I want to make like half the projects in this book. I love this little house. Look at this, a whole house with granny square patterns drawn on it. I just love it. I'll just show you one more. Oh, there's a bag in there. I want to make several pullovers, lots of cardigans. I'll just show you. What do I show you? I should have planned that in advance. I love this one. I just love that one. And I really like this picture. So I'm not sure whether there's an English version of the book. I will try and find out. If there is one, I will link it down below the video. If not, I'll link either the German or the original, so that at least you have the title and the author, and you can have a look at in case you want to buy something. Because she has most of the patterns are drawn. It's like in charts. It's not really difficult to do, but the instructions are really minimal. So if you are an experienced crocheter, you should have no problem, no matter what the language is. But if you are a beginner, it may be a bit difficult, so maybe you want to go ahead and practice a bit more before you start working with that book. Yeah, so that's the things I'm wearing. I won't button it down now, it takes too long to arrange it, but that's fine too. Okay, now on to finished objects. This week I have 3 finished objects to show you, and I'll start with the socks. I finished the cat socks, number 1. They're called number 1 because my sister wanted to have a pair of socks with cats on them for everyone in the family. That would be 5 pairs, but I don't think I will knit them all because she can knit and her son's girlfriend can knit. So I think we're going to sort of have everybody knit a bit, but I knit the one for my brother-in-law, and I've already started the pair for one of my nephews. So I'll at least knit those 2 pairs. Maybe I'll knit a 3rd pair, but we'll see about that. Yeah, so I only have 1 sock blocker in that size, so that's why one of the socks is on the sock blocker. But not being on the sock blocker means I can show you the cat face a bit more nicely. Yeah, so these are finished. I can't really give them to my brother-in-law as he lives in a different country, and I have to either wait for him to come back or I'll have to send them to him. I'll discuss that with my sister and see what we'll do. So that was finished object number 1. And then I finished the Hitchhiker shawl by Martina Behm. So I used a ball of DK weight sock yarn by Opal from the Shafpatensocken series. It's the first time that they produced the Shafpatensocken yarn as a DK weight yarn. Shafpaten means this is yarn that was taken from German sheep, and it was completely produced in Germany. So it's a very German yarn. But it's also a very nice yarn. It's a very nice color. I like the pattern. I just realized it's a German designer. It's a very German project. It's a bit weird. But anyway, because the yarn I used is a bit thicker than the pattern calls for, I did not get the 42 teeth that you're supposed to have for it to be a proper hitchhiker. I only have, I think, 36 or something. But it's a nice little shawlette. I like it. As soon as it's washed, I'll start wearing it. And I'm really happy. So I'm happy I finally knit a hitchhiker shawl after I've explained how to do this many times. But now I actually got to knit one. I got to knit with this yarn for the first time. Yeah, and I'm really happy with my hitchhiker. And now the 3rd finished object is my little piglet. I love it. Look at this little tail. It's so funny. So this is the tail is actually the only bit that you knit by itself and then you sew on. You have 2 purl bumps back here if you follow the pattern, so you know exactly where to sew it on. All the other pieces are knit on, so you don't have to sew them on. You just pick up the stitches where there are knit stitches, and then everything is knit together, and you don't have to sew anything except for the tail. Yeah, and I really like the way it looks. Because of the way it's constructed, it can sit by itself, it won't fall over. The ears look really, really funny. I love the nose. Now that it's stuffed, you can really tell it's a pig. It was, I think, a bit difficult when it wasn't stuffed yet. And yeah, I'm absolutely happy with how it came out. So most of my Piglet has been stuffed with yarn ends. I tend to collect all the yarn ends that I cut off when I weave in ends, and most of it is filled with yarn ends, except for a few places where I put a bit of the white stuff that you use, that you buy and use to stuff your knitted or crocheted animals. So I had to use a bit of that because I didn't have enough yarn ends. And also I felt it was going to be too heavy. If I just, the yarn ends are a lot heavier, I feel, than this white fluffy stuff that you use. So I did mix it up a bit. Yeah, but that's Little Piglet. And I love it. And I want to knit all the animals now. But so far I haven't started one yet. But I will soon. I'm pretty sure I will. Maybe I should. Can I? Oops. Yeah, that's not bad, is it? I'll leave him there. Okay, so that's all my finished objects for today. On to works in progress. I'll start as usual with my socks. And I finished the first of my longitudinal socks. And this is what it looks like. It's a pattern by Nicolor, and it's sideways knit socks. I really like the constructions of these. They came out pretty nice, but they also came out huge. I knit for size European 41, and I think they came out at least 43. I added in an orange stripe right in the middle, just for fun, just to mark where the middle of the sock is. And also because I was a bit worried the yarn I wouldn't have enough yarn. And I actually did use more than half a ball of yarn for this sock, just because it's so big, I think. So I used 55 grams, and I wouldn't have had enough yarn, except that one of my viewers generously sent me her leftover yarn. So with the yarn that I have left over and from what she sent me, I will have enough to do the second sock. I was not quite sure whether I should actually knit a second one because it's so big, but then I decided I will. So I've started the second sock. It'll be the same size as the first one. And my original plan was to donate the sock to the organization who help women with ovarian cancer, and I'm still going to do that. So even if that sock is really, really big, women come in different sizes. Some women have fairly big feet and they want socks that fit them, and I imagine that a lot of the donated socks aren't that big. And this sock is not only very long, it's also quite wide. But then I thought sometimes when you fall ill, you get swollen feet and maybe you can't wear proper socks, and then maybe there'll be a woman somewhere who'll be happy to get some oversized socks just to wear them maybe when she's lying in bed or when she's getting her chemotherapy, whatever. I thought it won't be bad to donate a pair of big socks. So maybe somebody is just waiting for some oversized socks, and that's why I decided to finish them. So finished the first one, started the second one. Then the next pair of socks is my brioche socks. I haven't shown them for a few weeks because I didn't work on them for a while, but I picked them up again, added just a few rows. I think I was already into the yellow stripe the last time I showed them, but I managed to finish the yellow bit and I'm back to the pink, and I've counted my rows so I know how many rows I have. And if you are not familiar with brioche socks, you don't need to knit a heel which is why they're quite long and they don't have a heel, because the brioche pattern is so flexible. It'll just open up over the heel and it'll be tight enough here. And so this is the first one I wanted to show you. I haven't shown it in a while. So this is what the sock's supposed to look like once you wear it. And one of the good things about the brioche sock is that it just fits anybody, because it doesn't tell you how long the foot has to be. So it's perfect for guest house shoes, or perfect as a present, because you don't need to know the shoe size that the recipient has. I knit a double knit toe, so this side is the pink toe, and on the inside I have the dark grey toe, and I need to knit another, what did I count? I think 24 rows, so it's not too bad and should get finished at some point. So I picked that up again. And then last week I told you I was going to start knitting the yarn that's wrapped around my present. I did not bring the present with me, but I brought the socks that I started. And the reason they're separated is because I just cut off the yarn because I want to change the color again. So this is the cuff I knit, then I changed the color to knit the leg of the sock, and because I got bored I decided to add in a bit of ribbing before the heel. And I just cut off the yarn now, and I'll swap the colors again. I decided to knit a few rounds before I start the heel. I want to do the fish lips kiss heel, which is fairly small, so I decided I'll add a few rows of knitting, then I'll do the fish lips kiss heel, and then I'll add the same number of rows after the heel in the same color, and then I will swap colors again. So it should be a fun pair of socks, and then at some point I can free my presents. If you're interested in what the present looks like, you have to look at last week's episode. So that's the third pair of socks that I worked on last week. Really the fourth one, because I did knit the cat socks as well. And I have planned another pair of socks. I'll just show you the yarn. This is another ball of the Opal Abo, the subscription yarn, and I decided to do another test knit. It's a test knit for a pair of socks for a German knitwear designer, and so I got the pattern yesterday, picked the yarn today, and I guess tonight I'll start knitting. And then I think I'm not supposed to show the pattern until it's released, so I'll probably just show you maybe the ribbing or the heel or something. I'll see how far I get till next week, but that's the yarn I picked for that test knit. Yeah, so that should be everything for socks and small things. Then on to my shawls. I continued knitting on, that's another test knit, so we're at the test knit section right now, and that's that triangular shawl that I'm test knitting for another German designer. And last week I'd only just started with one of the leaves, and I've added 3 more of those leaves. It's a really nice pattern. It's quite well written. It's very soft. It's fairly loosely knitted, but that's what I wanted because it's a shawl. I wanted it to be as soft as possible, and also it's the gauge that the pattern calls for. And so I'm knitting the yarn held double, as it's a very fine lace yarn, and enjoy this a lot. Okay, then the other shawl I worked on is the virus shawl, virus triangular shawl, and I'm crocheting that with the with this gradient yarn ball. And as usual, I added 1 more pattern repeat. I think I had 2 color changes in that 1 repeat, but I guess that's because the rows are getting a lot longer and I'm using a lot more yarn for every pattern repeat. So now I think I lost the first 2 colors, and I'm down to the last 2 colors. I think it's 4 different colors that are in this ball of yarn. and yeah, still enjoy it, like it a lot. The yarn, I think I'm at a point now where I want to weigh my yarn before I start the next pattern repeat. That's what's left. So it's still a bit to go, but I can't really tell how much I need for one pattern repeat. So before I start crocheting, I will weigh the yarn. I will finish the pattern repeat. I will weigh the yarn again, so I know how much approximately I use for one pattern repeat, so that I will know when it's done. Because I don't want to crochet like half a pattern repeat and then decide, and then notice that the yarn is running out, and then have to undo it. Because with this pattern, you really need to finish a whole pattern repeat for the edge to look nice. If it's just half of it, it wouldn't look finished, wouldn't look so nice. Yeah, so that's the crochet shawl I'm working on, and I did some more crochet last week. I continued some work on my Carnaby crochet along pullover. So I haven't shown that in a few weeks because I didn't work on it, but I had finished the front and back. It's this really bright, please wear me when it's winter and dark outside pullover. So I had sewn together all the front and back pieces. I've added some rounds around it so that it's wide enough. It was a bit too small with just the pieces. That's the neckline that I could crochet around if I wanted to. I'm not too sure. And this is the first sleeve. I crocheted that the way the pattern was written, just a bit smaller. I thought the original was just too wide. And then with the second sleeve, I decided to organize the colors. So that's what that looks like. And then last week, I added a little border around it. It's not in the pattern, but as I said, the sleeves were just a bit too narrow, not wide enough. So I just added this bit around it, and I added more on top of the sleeve and less down at the cuff. And I added a few rows of black as well, so I could go round and round the sleeve. And yeah, and now it's time to sew the sleeves onto the front and back. I did not block the pieces before I sewed them together. Most patterns tell you to first block the pieces and then sew them together, but I was too lazy to do that. So I just sewed them together the way they were. And I have decided now what I'm going to do is I will sew the sleeves to the front and back like that. And then I will wash and block it before I sew the side seams. So that means I can lay it down flat. It won't be double thickness, and I can just block it lightly so that it maybe grows a little bit in size, but mostly so that all the pieces lie flat. Because right now, with some of the pieces, especially with this one, it's very visible that it hasn't been blocked, and it's quite wavy in a way. So that's the main point in blocking the pieces, so they will lay flat. And as I said, it'd be okay for the pieces to grow a little bit. And yeah, and once it's dry, I will sew the side seams, and then this pullover will finally be finished. And long-time viewers of my podcast will know that I crocheted a second Carnaby crochet along jumper at the same time in cotton yarn in blue colors. And then I haven't crocheted the sleeves on that one. I finished all the front and back pieces, but not the sleeves yet. So as soon as that pullover is done, I will concentrate on the cotton version, and I will probably make that into a cardigan, I decided, instead of a pullover. So I'll have the same pattern once as a pullover and once as a cardigan. That's the plan. And I started a new project, a new crochet project, and that was it was really my friend's idea, and this is going to be a present, so I won't say too much about it. I'll just show you. This is a corner-to-corner crochet square, and this is the first time I'm actually doing a project in corner-to-corner technique. I tried the pattern once when I first heard about it, but just as a little swatch. I never made anything out of it. and it's old yarn that I found in my stash. So the grey yarn is Lana Grossa Ragazza per Te. 2 balls, I have no idea where I got them from. And the other yarn, the pink yarn, I think it didn't have a ball band, but I think it's the yoga yarn by Wollerödel that I bought ages ago. And I am crocheting the square. It's called 2 Hearts That Beat as One Corner to Corner Crochet Square, I think is the name. It's I linked it on my pattern page on Ravelry, so if you want to have a look at it, it's a free pattern, and it's originally part of a blanket, but I'm not going to make a blanket, but I'm also not explaining what I'm making because the person who will get this might watch the video, so I don't want to give away too much. This is how far that I got, and I'll explain more after I've given it as a present, and then I'll explain all about it. So that's I think the only new cast on from last week, except for the blue and white socks, but yeah, so it's basically 2 new cast ons and 1 that I've planned. Yeah, talking about crochet, after I finished the cat blanket last week, I I did continue working on the next crochet kids blanket that I had started, and that's the dinosaur blanket. And I can't believe, but I forgot the 2 pieces that I already have at home, so I can't show you. I basically crocheted those squares quite a while ago, but then I forbid myself to work on them until the cat blanket was finished. So the only thing I did last week is completely finish the square with the dinosaur on it. I had crocheted the square, but I hadn't done the horns and the eyes yet, so I did that. And I can't show you because I left them at home. I'm so sorry. I put a picture up on my Ravelry page. If you're curious, you can have a look. I will try and crochet at least 1 square every week so that I make sure this blanket grows all the time. And then next week, I'll definitely bring the pieces that I have and show you. Yeah, really sorry I can't show you today. That is all the crochet I did last week. Then I will go on and show you the skirt that I'm knitting. That's another Opal subscription yarn, and I've already knit a pullover in this color with white color work in it, and I have knit the number of rounds that I had planned to knit before the next increase, and I just did the last increase on that skirt. The skirt was basically wide enough to be worn even without the last increase, but then it would have been a very form-fitting skirt, and I'm not too fond of those, and I prefer skirts to be a bit wider so you can move more easily, and I just like the look of them. And so I finished the increase. I want to add a few more rounds, and then I want to do the color work, and then I'll just add a bit of ribbing. So the skirt is not going to be very long, so maybe it'll be like mid-thigh, something like that, but I think that should look quite nice, and that's the plan at the moment. And this is what I still have left. So this is all 1 ball of yarn, 100 grams of sock yarn. I'm always surprised how much you can knit with just 1 ball of yarn, especially if you knit a bit looser than you do with socks. So I usually knit my socks on 2.5 or 2.75 millimeter needles, and I'm knitting this skirt on a 3.75 millimeter needle, and the pullover I even knit on a 4 millimeter needle. So you really get a lot more out of the yarn when you knit more loosely. Yeah, so that's a skirt. I'm looking forward to the color work pattern. Then that brings me to our knit-alongs. So the first knit-along is all the patterns from Tin Can Knits in their Simple collection, and I am knitting the flax pullover. Last week I had finished both the sleeves, so my sister could use my knitting needle. So these are the 2 sleeves, and then I was debating on how long to make the pullover, and because I couldn't really make up my mind, I pulled out the last I think 4 or 5 pullovers that I knit with sock yarn, and I laid them on top of each other because I wanted to see how long they were. And it was quite funny because I think all the sleeves were almost exactly the same length. So it's quite obvious I know how long I want my sleeves to be. But the overall length of the pullovers, they were all different. There weren't 2 that were the same. They're all different, 5 different lengths. But still, I made a decision that I will start the ribbing, but I decided to split the pullover. So instead of knitting the ribbing on the whole pullover, I'm just knitting on the front stitches plus most of the side stitches. So I have this, on a normal flax pullover, you're supposed to knit garter stitches on, or garter stitch pattern on top of the sleeve. And with the flax light pullover that I knit myself, I did that, and I repeated the garter stripe down the side of the front and back. And with this pullover, I decided to do some ribbing instead, and I've also repeated the ribbing in between the front and backs, the back and the front of the pullover. And I decided to knit most of those stitches in the ribbing for the front, and then I will pick up stitches from behind, and I will also knit the same stitches or most of those stitches again for the back, so that it won't open up right here, but it'll overlap for a bit before it splits. I thought it might be a good idea. And I'm also planning to do the back a little longer than the front. So I'm quite happy with the length of my front at the moment. I will add some more rows so that the ribbing has the same length as the ribbing on the sleeve, on the cuffs. And and for the back I will first knit more in stockinette before I start the ribbing, so the ribbing itself can have the same length as the ribbing on the front, but as it starts later, the back will be a bit longer. And with the front, I also, I kind of started the ribbing a bit on the outside before I started the overall rib pattern. It's a bit confusing, but I hope you understand what I'm saying. So it's just those 2 purl ribs that I started before I did the rest in rib pattern. And I was thinking of doing that in the back as well, but then I'll have more stitches that are added in rib pattern before I do the whole ribbing. Maybe it'll become clearer when I start the back and you can see what I'm talking about. So that's what I'm doing on that pullover. And as you can see, there's another of those colorful cables that I got from my sister. Really enjoy these. So that's the pullover. And the other knit along that we're doing is the Optic blanket. And with that, I'm doing 1 square every week. And last week I knitted, which one did I knit last week? This one. So this is the same yarn that I knit leg warmers for myself out of a few weeks ago. And this is square number 9. And that means that the first square out of 9 squares is finished. And I will not add squares to this piece, but I will start a new square, and then I'll just knit several of these 9 squares. Sounds a bit stupid, but I think you know what I mean. And then once I finish those, I will sew them together. But that'll take some time as I'm taking it easy with this blanket. Yep. So really happy with that. I'm also happy to start a new piece of the blanket. So it means it's more portable. It's easier to work with. And yeah, I've already started looking at colors, deciding which color to start with this week. Haven't decided 100% yet, but you'll see next week what I came up with. So that is everything I knit and crocheted last week. I hope you enjoyed seeing the progress on my project, and I'll see you in the next one.